Good evening and welcome, followers of Bountiful Emergency Preparedness Council. I'm Casey Bowen with the Emergency Preparedness Council, and we'd like to welcome you to the third streaming event that we have with Becky Goodrich, who has done our two previous streaming events. We are again in her house and very thankful for her hosting us here. If you are tuning in, hopefully you will have looked for the handouts. As we are doing this, we are in the path of freedom for the Hillfield Air Force Base. So you may occasionally get a little bit of a loud background noise as we're going through this. Anyway, as we're talking about the handouts, they can be found on the Bountiful City's Emergency Preparedness site, which is bountiful-eprep-handouts.org. And I strongly suggest that you look for those if you can, because they will come in handy as we're going through and they may generate some questions that you may have. Again, we're thankful to Becky for allowing us into her house. As far as what's going on with Bountiful City Emergency Preparedness, we recently, this last weekend, finished up a CERT class of about 46 people that did a mock disaster, and it was really a great experience for them. And I wanted to thank all of the Bountiful City CERT instructors who helped out with the classes and with the mock disaster, and wanted to thank those who took time from their busy schedules to spend 8 evenings going through the CERT class curriculum, which we teach every spring and every fall. We would encourage you, if you can, to participate in those and get to know a little bit more what you could do in case of an emergency. Going back to the topic at hand right now, we feel like doing a food preparedness seminar is a really good idea right now, because we may be facing some problems with food availability in the future like we have in the past, and utilizing that food storage, which we encourage you to get now and to put in, is a great way to provide security for your family. So enough from hearing from me. I'd like to turn the time over to our presenter, the Becky Goodrich, who's a great cook and great at preparedness. So Becky, go ahead.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share what I know about long-term staples, which is why we are here for In Good Taste. So I'm going to have a panel of people trying what I have, and they promise they will give their honest opinion about what I make. All right, so if you look at your handout, if you have it open, we're going to start at the front page on wheat. Before I get started on the wheat first, I want to let everyone see what I'm cooking it on. This is a butane stove. These are cans of butane, looks like hairspray. And these are amazing little dudes to have around. Because butane is clean, you can actually use it in the house without any issues. So love that, guys. They come in a little suitcase. And I take these two every time we go camping. So one can be in the camp and one can be hiking somewhere. So that's what we're using today. So, so we're going to start on the wheat, cracked wheat cereal. You can see what I have here. All this is the wheat grain cut 2 or 3 times. And that's why it looks kind of chunky, and that's actually what is good for you. So I've already got my dry ingredients in there. Then I'm going to put my wet ingredients and get a little stove started. An awesome thing about these little stoves is you can actually keep them, the heat is able to go to whatever you want, and it'll keep that. When we've used them in camping, they were able to keep their heat even though it was raining, and we did have a little hail. So, all right, we're going to let this go. I'm going to turn it on high. We want it nice and high. And then what's going to happen with the wheat is it's going to soak up all that water. It actually will come to a point that it looks kind of green on top, and that is actually all the minerals and the vitamins coming off the hull. So we'll let that one get started. It's going to take a minute or 2 here. So, yeah, okay, it's on high, awesome. All right, so let me tell you a few things about wheat. I put them out here so I don't forget to tell you. There's so much to know about each of these ingredients that we're going to talk about tonight. So wheat has 13 grams of protein per 100 gram batch. It has gluten, which is what helps it bind. Its fiber prevents constipation, cleans out your colon. Because it absorbs 3 times its weight in water, it will actually fill you up more, right, with a less amount of the ingredients. So the ratio that we're here tonight, it was the 1 cup of cracked wheat to 3.5 cups of water. So for 1 small cup, you get so much more. This entire batch would probably feed my family once. So because it takes all that water in, it takes longer to digest, keeps you feeling full. It's actually quite cheap. Wheat is quite cheap unless you get some of the special ones. It has a 30-year shelf life, which is fantastic. I keep mine in these little containers and keep as I need it, and then all the others, like my actual grain, is kept in my cold storage. All right, so it also has essential oils. White flour doesn't, because white flour actually takes everything out and then they put something back in. That's why it says enriched flour, all-purpose flour. So I'm a snob. I don't want them to take all the good stuff out and then start putting stuff back in. I'm just gonna eat it like God made it. All right, so because it does have oils in the grain, we need to make sure not to grind it until you need it. Those oils will go sour if the longer you have them ground. So we only grind it when we need it. That's why you'll see my wheat flour there is almost empty, because I grind it when I need it. Once you grind it, though, you actually can put it in the freezer. You can put it in the fridge, and that will elongate the time frame. Freezing and refrigerating will elongate all the time frames for all of the long-term staples. All right, so fun thing about wheat is it can be popped whole. I did that. I wasn't a fan, but you can actually pop it like you do corn, right in the kernel. Ground for flour, of course, and then they actually can take the kernels and sprout them in water and eat them just like an alfalfa sprout. Or you can sprout them, then dry the sprouts, and then ground. And what that one does is helps you with a lot of the minerals and a lot of the flavor. And it digests a little bit differently instead of just taking it out of the grain. And then for what we're doing here, we have cracked for cereal. And that's this cracked wheat is for that. But it also can be used, also can be used as a meat substitute, which is fantastic. So if times are hard, you can actually make the cereal. Don't put anything in the cereal. And you can actually do like 1 cup of cracked wheat and that's already cooked, and put it into your burger, whatever burger kind you have. And it actually will extend the life of that burger. So you can use less meat as you put in this meat substitute. So wheat is really awesome. Another thing that, another cereal that wheat does is farina. And farina is really teeny tiny that they've ground. It is not like flour. Sometimes it looks like flour, but these are actually small grains, just little teeny tiny, but it definitely has a different consistency. And I love farina. If I have a morning, I really don't eat all day because it's filled me up so much. All right, as you can see, we've got some boiling going on over here on our cracked wheat. We're actually going to let this entire pot cook all of the liquid out of it. We want all the liquid out of it. And so when you see the green on top, kind of looks green, don't just fold it back in. Do not put it don't drain it off into the sink. So, all right, and you can see probably that this kind of looks green, what we have on here, and it's going to get into the wheat. It's going to soak through. So that one's almost done. All right, there is a durum wheat, and this is what you use for pasta and couscous. And like I said about all-purpose flour, it is a mix of hard and soft. what your proteins are, it'll act differently. So I'm not a fan of all-purpose flour. I only have one recipe, I think, for cookies that has to have flour, a white flour. But everything else I've been able to do just a one-to-one into my old recipes that were like from my grandma that always used the all-purpose. So we also talked about when we grind it. So we grind it as we need it. You can put it into the fridge. You can put it in the freezer. When I actually fill up that container and I've ground it, it can sit on my shelf 3-4 months before any of those oils begin to seep back out and become yucky. All right, so looks like we're almost done with here. We're going to let this wheat keep going. It does take it takes about 20 minutes, and so we're going to let that do its thing.
We are watching the wheat cook. It looks like it's almost getting there. It is starting to thicken up. As long as we may have a captive audience, but we don't want to continue on with the presentation, would you like to discuss your camping experience with those stoves and how long they managed to last for you?
So I love these little stoves. They're very versatile. I know people who actually can on them with the big kettle, and they're doing water canning on them. They're very very sturdy, very hardy. This is the butane. It comes in one of these. The last price point was $1.50. Probably now it's $2. I actually have a few of these so that if I ever need to leave my house, I grab my stoves, make sure I have a couple more butane. We camped a couple years ago with 2 brand new stoves, 2 brand new butanes. We were there up there 4 days, and I only used 6 of these little dudes. So they are it's quite long. They're very versatile. They're movable, which I think it's great because my husband likes to go climbing, so they can actually take this one of the stoves in their little suitcase, and then they can actually go up in the lakes or the mountains and have their own while somebody else is back in camp.
And those were 3 meals a day, right?
Yeah.
And crew.
Yeah, we had 5-6 people there. And I don't have a lot of hair, but I like what I do have to be nice, and so I would put water here. I brought extra water to warm up so I could wash my hair. All right, this is good to go. I'm going to turn it off. I previously added the brown sugar. You actually can sweeten your cereals with brown sugar, white sugar. Maple is a really good one. Just maple syrup is a good one. I like to do things that have stevia in them because stevia is such a great product for sweetening. So I'm going to hand this to my people. We're going to taste it. It's very hot. I apologize. But I'll actually make one of these, 1 or 2, keep them in the fridge. Lasts about a week before kind of smelling a little weird.
Redo tiny.cc to get this.
All right, so I love this stuff. You can even freeze it, bring it out, and you can put it in the microwave, and it'll be right back to this in just a few seconds. So love my cracked wheat. I know it's hot. But I love farina as well. Farina is so yummy. Farina and cracked wheat neither come ready to put into long-term storage. So my cracked wheat, actually I'll put these side by side. My cracked wheat and my farina I buy at Winco. And I buy just a little bit at a time so that it doesn't go sour. So you can tell with these two that the cracked wheat is maybe 1, 2, 3 times ground and then left alone. And then the farina really gets down to just before flour. But you can actually feel it, and you can feel that there's grains. So love both of these things. A 1-to-3 ratio on cracked wheat or more. We did 3.5 today. And 1 to 2 on farina, which is like the rice ratio as well. So, yeah,
Great.
4 cups to less than a cup.
This is
That's
really
amazing.
good.
It's good stuff.
Really good,
Yeah.
Becky. Thank you.
So if you wanted to use it for meat extender, you would get it to this. Obviously, I don't put the brown sugar in there.
What's the ratio of brown sugar?
I had the 2. Is it 2? Yeah, sugar to taste, but I put 2 tablespoons of brown sugar in it. So if you wanted to use it as a meat extender, excuse me, then you would not put any sweetening in it. And then you would decide how much you want to go in. My family, when I did that, put it in sausage, put it in burger. They could tell because they know that I'm always messing with food. They're very cautious about what comes on the table. But when I did a 1-to-1 ratio, that was a little too much. It kind of took over the burger. So I do like a 1 to half cup. So, and then, in that batch, 1 to half cup, so until you've got your entire thing. So you can make this in meatloaf. You could make it into sausage and gravy, and you can just put it in because meat is such a great commodity when there's an emergency or in just regular inflation. You can actually extend the meat that you buy a little bit more, and I think that's a fabulous use of this. Did we have any questions about wheat? Or no?
No, we don't. We're
Okay.
kind of still having problems with YouTube.
I don't know how far to go.
Will there be anybody that has any problems stomach-wise by eating wheat?
So yes, if you have never used real wheat, and I'm meaning the flour that's all-purpose only, you don't usually have digestive issues per se, but your body does need to get used to it. So if you've never ever used it, right, you start with a cereal. You start by putting the flour in your cookie recipe, right? And then your body gets used to that. In fact, this is actually better for your digestive system than all-purpose white flour is because it's straight. It hasn't been messed with, right? It's the purest that you can get. So if somebody did have some issues, I mean, obviously this is a gluten issue too, right? It has gluten in it. And if you have to be gluten-free, that's fine. Or you have celiacs, obviously you wouldn't be touching this. So, but other than that, usually your body gets really used to it really quickly. My family did. My husband, his mother always used all-purpose flour, so he was really wary when I started researching and baking that way. But he's actually moved over to it now. He loves my bread. Get 2 loaves in an hour and a half. So now my entire family is accustomed to all of it. So, and they haven't had any issues. At least not that they've told me. So, should I move on? I think we have to move on,
It's
right?
very good.
Go ahead and
Thank
move on.
Of course.
We're on one.
What?
We're on.
Okay, good. All right, so you can see the texture here. It's beautiful. I could have stopped a little bit more or a little bit sooner, and it would be more runny. So if you want more cereal than like the stew consistency, which is I love chowder consistency. I do all of it everywhere. But we could put more water in and then taking it off the heat a little bit early so that you have a different consistency because the more that it sits, the more it's going to absorb the water. All right, so we're going to move on to corn. This is also the second recipe that is in your packet there. What I have here is cornmeal cereal. Now, I hate to call it cornmeal because you can actually grind your own like you do wheat. Cut it 2 or 3 times, and it's not just cornmeal. It's not masa harina either. I'll talk about that in a second. So what we have here is cornmeal and the sweetener. I could have used maple. I could have used stevia, things like that. It does not change the consistency. So we're going to take this 2.5 cups of water, and when we put the heat on this, it is going to go very quickly. It gets up and around real quick. There we go. So I actually don't put this on the highest. because it's going to go real quick. It absorbs the water really, really fast. So that's why we want to, so it looks really, actually that's why this is here, sorry. So we whisk that in and then we don't leave. This is not something like the wheat where you can put it on and, well, in my case, watch it boil over. But leave it and then come back and it's evaporated. This one, because it takes the water so fast, it's like done in like 6 minutes. So I'm gonna put that on a lower heat instead of high like I did that one. And tell you some things about corn. So corn has 8 grams of protein per 100 grams of batch. It is gluten-free. It's heavy, and I love heavy. I like chowder. Those are all filling, and they're wonderful in an emergency because they're comfortable and they make you feel like home. Pancakes and biscuits and cereal that's nice and heavy. Those things are very comforting in a long-term emergency. So what you can do with corn is pop it whole, like everybody goes to the movies and we know that it's popped from whole. You can actually ground it into meal. Grits are what I think a lot of people think of when they think of cornmeal and cornbread, right, for chili. But the corn is actually a little bit like the farina. It is milled down to almost flour, but not quite. And so when you can do grits or do the cereal like we're doing right now. So this is already taken some of the water in. It's really fast. So I'm leaving it. I'm doing a little bit less.
Becky, how does that vary from grits?
So grits are like the cracked wheat. They're not quite flour. They're a little bit more than the farina in consistency. Yeah, I love grits. They're wonderful. I do this with my cornmeal cereal too. I just put butter on it, brown sugar, good to go. So that's how I like my cracked wheat too. So this is quick, getting there really quick. You can also grind the corn into flour, which is masa harina for tortillas and cornbread. Because this lacks the gluten like wheat does, it will need to have what most gluten-free products do. You need extra binders, like eggs are great binders. Yeah, see that consistency? We're almost there. You need more moisture. So when you're going to use corn, because it doesn't have the gluten, you need to add extra moisture. That's why this was originally 2 cups of water, and I lifted it to 2.5. Yep, look at this. Isn't this beautiful? And it's almost done, and we're just at medium heat. And then it will also need gluten-free flours. They also need lifters. They need a leavener, like cornstarch or baking powder or baking soda. Those are all leaveners that bring the moisture in. All right. Look how beautiful that is. That is so yummy. So this is the same consistency as farina would be. This is how farina is. Let's see if I can do this without messing everything up. All right. Yeah, I think that's. I did put. Lovely. I did put brown sugar in this one, but I just leave it like this in the fridge, and my kids come and grab a couple cups, and they make it the way they want to make it. Actually, just go ahead and take that. There's a garbage right there behind you.
If you want to pass.
Casey. All right. Do we have any questions about corn? Corn is usually the one people know, right? So it's they really they are accustomed to it, and they don't need a lot of training in corn, much like which is different than wheat. Using wheat from ground or from berry is something that you have to learn and get used to. All right, so these are beautiful.
Ooh, Becky, I really like this.
I like that one. That's yummy.
I like the texture.
Yeah.
This is like cream of wheat.
Cream of wheat.
Mm-hmm. That's farina. That's what
Which is
farina
his
is.
favorite thing for
Little.
breakfast.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that farina, how we know it is as cream of wheat. Yeah, but it's actually called farina. So, all right, we're going to leave the cereals alone, and we're going to start on on our griddle. So we're going to talk about rice. People know rice as well too, so they don't need to get used to rice as much. Rice can be stored 25, 30 years, which is fantastic. I put all my long-term storage at 2004. I think it's 2004, 2007. And none of my products yet, except my pasta, have had any issues. Pasta, because it's made with sugar, it actually will expire faster than anything else. So once again, leave the staple in the big container until you need to use it. All right, so we're going to do what I call rice cakes. You can actually make rice cakes, and if you have leftover rice, right? Or you can do stuffing. So next week, the week after, when we have Thanksgiving, you have extra stuffing. Just put it in here with a couple eggs, right out on the griddle. Very fast, very yummy. All right, so all I have to do in this, got the 2 eggs. I'm actually making a double batch because I want some for leftovers. All right, with this recipe, oh really? With this recipe, you can actually make rice cakes in 2 different forms. One is like a dinner. It's so salt, pepper, garlic, onion, things like that. And then, sorry, I think I've lost. Okay. And you can actually do a breakfast. So I have here a little bit of brown sugar, some nutmeg, and some cinnamon. And I'm going to whisk all this together. So I'm making some like dessert ones, breakfast ones. All right. So before, when I was doing this for demos, I did classes in my home, and I would just tell them, all you need to do is make sure you have more egg than rice. You need to be able, when you whisk this, you need to be able to see more egg around there than rice. And so I always use the biggest eggs that I have. I whisk it really good, make sure all of my spices are good. You can actually put the cinnamon, nutmeg, brown sugar, and raisins. And put that in, just like a custard, like my grandma used to make. So yeah, my custard is one of the things I love to make with these, with rice, because it reminds me of my grandma.
So it sounds like rice pudding cakes.
Yes. Yeah, if we're going to put the yummy stuff in there, yes. All right, so I'm going to make sure I've got some oil here on my griddle. That's a lot. And then we're just actually going to put this is a double batch. It usually just takes 2, just gives us 2, but this should give us at least 4, if not more. All right.
I'll eat the extra.
Of course. All right, leave that alone. Get that up. Okay, so while that's preheating, we are going to talk about rice. Rice has 6 grams of protein, so we're going down the hill. It's gluten-free, which is great, stores forever. 1 cup of rice to 2 cups of water yields actually 3 cups, which is great. So once again, a small amount of the long-term staple and needing a lot of water, and you will get something very hearty and that lasts for a long time. This 1-to-2 ratio is tried and true. If you want more water, if you put more water, it gets a little soggy. If you put in less water, it gets a little crunchy. All right, so you can actually do this a couple different ways. 20 minutes on the stove, that's how I usually do rice. My son has a rice cooker. He is determined to say that it's better than on the stove. But you can actually do 10 minutes in the Instant Pot. So while we have electricity, use that. And then you can actually bake it, which is kind of funky, 25 minutes in a 375-degree oven. So that's kind of interesting. The only time I've ever seen rice in the oven is for my grandma's custard. So, all right. Once again, we're making these breakfast-like, and we have more egg than we do rice, and that's exactly where we want to be. So yeah, we're gonna get 6 or so of these.
So your rice is already cooked then?
Yeah, I cooked. Sorry, forgot to mention that I'd already cooked it because we have leftovers all the time, right? Sorry. We need to. You can use rice as a side dish. So I love rice-a-roni. I love it. But once you learn how to use rice, all that is learning how to do sauces and spice. And anything that rice can do, pasta can do too. So once you learn about gravies and seasonings and stuff that work on rice, all those same ones work on pasta. So it's like a 2-for-1. So a side dish with rice would be like mushrooms and onions and garlic and just saute it, and it tastes so good. But that, of course, is after you have cooked the rice. You can actually make rice taste a little bit better if you are not a fan by cooking it in broth instead of just water. So you put 2 or 3 teaspoons of chicken. Thank you, bouillon. And then cook it that way, let it cook down so it infuses all that yumminess into the rice, which is great. Rice lasts about a week. This rice that I have right here is actually what I made last week, right? So I wanted to make sure, it doesn't smell bad or anything like that. But if you do think you smell something, all you have to do is rinse the rice. And it's fine. Same thing goes for beans. Beans last a little under a week. And the first thing to go sour on beans is the juice. So if you can actually take off the juice, rinse them, the beans are actually just fine. So same here for the rice. So just under a week, fridge after cooking 6 months in the freezer, you can actually take, I take them Rubbermaid, right? Put them in there, take them out of the freezer and just steam it in the microwave. And it doesn't take hardly any time to do that. So my son does that too for the diet he uses. So these are just like pancakes. They're beautiful. Look how awesome that is.
Except unlike flour, you don't have to wait for the little bubbles.
Not this one. No bubbles on this one. You're just looking for the edges to get firm. People ask me about brown rice. Why don't I use brown rice? One, I'm not a fan. But when we talk about long-term staples, brown rice is at the very, very bottom of the list because it only can last 8 years in number 10 cans. And the only company that I have found that does that is Thrive. I haven't seen it anyplace else. So brown rice would not be what we would consider a long-term staple. So we're wanting something 10, 15, beyond. So people ask me about it. It's got almost the same as rice in protein. So not a fan of brown rice, but if you really like it, I'm sure that by the time when we go a few years, we may have, brown rice that is able to be stored, 10, 15, like that. So I'm going to let them taste test that. Can actually take the rest of these off. See, they look just like pancakes. They are nice and heavy. I love that they are heavy. Like I said, in an emergency, and I actually have a long-term staple class that I do. In an emergency, especially for children,
I'd give you more, but I want it all.
One more.
It's important
You put
when
syrup or
there's
anything on it?
good if you want to. In an emergency, it is psychologically important for especially children to have stuff they're used to. So pancakes and sausage and gravy and all those yummy things that remind us of home, that's what you want to cook, because in an emergency, being in an emergency, the stress of that plus how you feel like nothing's going to get better. So when you use good recipes, then you kind of help that psychologically for people. Okay.
So, got a question
Yes,
here.
please.
We don't have access to the recipes in front of us.
Okay.
Being that we are the taste testers, we noticed a definite hint of sweetness in there. And
Yep.
I'm trying to It almost tasted like maple syrupy a little bit. Maybe that's
Yeah,
just
I
my
didn't-
association with pancakes. But
Yeah, I did not actually put syrup, which you can use, or stevia. It was just a tablespoon of brown sugar. Brown sugar is my go-to for
It was very good.
yeah.
It's very good.
Awesome.
What would you do for a dinner?
So dinner would be garlic, salt, pepper, anything like that. You can actually put veggies in here, right? You can chop some onions or things like that. Just put them all in.
And
Yeah. So if you do this with at Thanksgiving with the stuffing, you really want to make sure that there's more egg in there than there is stuffing. So because it is harder to bind together than rice is. All right, do you have any other questions about rice?
We got any
Very
questions
tasty.
yet?
Awesome.
Very good.
Anybody want to?
Okay. All right, so now we're going to move on to beans. And this is the first staple I ever learned how to do when I finally got off my duff and decided to do, food storage. Beans were the first thing that I used because they have a ton of protein. They have 16 grams of protein. We've been talking about, 13, 6, 7. So beans are great. You get that 16 grams of protein per 1 cup. And it's actually a third of our daily needs, which is fantastic. So you use beans, 3 cups in a week, you're fantastic. All right. That's why they, when you eat them, they are fill you up. They're very versatile. There's all kinds of beans, tons and tons and tons. Black and pinto are my favorite. They're really easy to use. We're actually going today to use navy or cannellini, how you hear about it. Beans have 12 to 15 grams of fiber. We all know what fiber is good for, keeping our gut health stable. So we're looking at the beanie pancake recipe that you should have in front of you. There's a couple different ways that you can use beans. Beans can be used, and we're going to talk about the old way we used to do this. Beans can be ground from bean into flour. It's very heavy. It doesn't do a real good job of acting like any other flour that you ever have seen. So if you're going to use bean flour in something, it would need a lot of leaveners, a lot of baking soda, cornstarch, things like that to help, because it's really, really heavy. We also can just crock pot beans, or you can find them in the pan. Either way, the old method no longer is necessary. We don't need to. What my grandma did, she would put all the beans out on the table, would pick out the rocks, and then they were in a big, vat of water. They had to soak overnight, and then you finally had to cook them. And they weren't always done correctly, so don't have to do that anymore. We can just put them in the crock pot. I actually put all my beans in the crock pot except kidney beans. Kidney beans need less time. They actually open up like flowers when you cook them too long. Just put them in the crock pot, 8 to 12 hours, done. No sorting, no soaking, nothing like that. 1 cup of beans in the ratio is 3 cups of water. So how I learned it when I was doing this on my own, I just put a layer of, not even an inch across the bottom of my crock pot, and then put water to the top, put it on overnight, and they were done in the morning. Sorry. My dog. All right, so we're going to use the navy or cannellini, however you like them, and we're going to use this as a puree or a mashed. So I have these right here, and I'm going to ask one of my people. You can mash them with a fork, or you can just mash them with a potato masher. And so this recipe is not asking for bean flour. It's actually asking for beans already cooked and mashed. So they're pretty simple. You are getting the hull in here, which is fantastic. It has a ton of vitamins. and minerals in the husk of the bean. So I have all my wet things here. All my wet items here. I'm going to put that bean in there. Okay, we're going to make sure that those beans are completely mixed in. People ask me about the gas issue, right? The beans comes up and that's the first thing people want to know. Don't beans give you gas? Well, the longer that I do this, I've come to realize that if I ever use canned beans, they don't get cooked enough and there can be gas issues. But because I do my own and they're done in a crock pot, nice and long, does not happen. I've never had a gas issue in my home. So he's done an awesome job of mashing these, and he's putting, we've got the husks in there and everything. He's going to get all of the, thank you, going to get all of the protein and minerals and vitamins in here. So I'll use that for tomorrow since I have this here. I'm going to turn on my griddle. All right, so I have this, I have the wets all incorporated, no big chunks or anything like that. I'm going to take all my dry. So this is the wheat flour, the couple tablespoons sugar, the baking powder. And in my wet is already the milk and the beans, the oil, and an egg. So we're going to go ahead and put this all in here. I do try to make most of my recipes, actually I try to make all of my recipes where you do dry, put all the dry ingredients, all the wet ingredients, and then you just combine real quick. Something to know about any kind of flour, any kind of baking, is the less you can touch it, the better. My grandma told me that. It's not to overbeat your batters. Just get them just combined and let it go. So here, I'm going to put these on here. So it's nice. It's a little thicker than some people might like their pancakes, but I guarantee you will actually not be able to taste the beans. Cannellini or navy are pretty tasteless. You can actually infuse all kinds of flavors into that bean. Black bean also, one of my favorites, is actually really great. Doesn't taste a lot. The most we would ever taste in recipes, a hull, would be the hulls. So you will taste that, but they won't taste like anything when we do this. Pintos are fantastic. They're so vertical. One of my favorites. I make my own refried beans. So just like my person here, you can just mash them like this. You can mash them in a blender or a food processor, put a little milk in there to get the consistency, and you're done. So I love those three. I like kidney beans too. They're great on salads and such. So once you have put all these in the crock pot or the Instant Pot or whatever, you can use them a lot of different ways. We actually exchange meat with beans sometimes. So instead of having tacos with meat, we have tacos with bean, which is a burrito, right? And you can actually use them in quesadillas and all that cheese, right? And just put some beans in there. It's really good. So this is just like every other pancake. We want to wait until everything, you have a ton of bubbles on top. Because it is heavy, because beans are heavy, you do need to let them get a little bit more than a regular pancake because they're really heavy. So I don't want them to fall apart, but these are absolutely beautiful. You can tell right there I didn't get that. I'm going to let that one sit for a minute. It needs more. Oh, might have got that one too soon. All right, making sure that I told you all about beans. Cooked whole, ground to flour, whole and then mashed or refried. You can actually take this puree of any color, right, of any kind of bean, and put it as a thickener in your chowders. Put it like I have done here in pancakes and biscuits, whatever. We say just to use the same color as the result will be. So you use black beans when you're doing brownies. You use white beans if it's going to be a light colored item you can do, and then a medium color for pinto beans. All right, going to put these out here. Let me test the testers. Yeah, that one's awesome. There we go. So hopefully all that they're going to say is it is a little heavier, the only thing you might taste is the texture of the hull on the beans. These smell so good. I want some syrup. All right, there you go,
Or
guys.
peanut butter or.
Yeah, something. All right, so beans are really, really versatile. They're an easy way to get protein and fiber into your diet. I just love them, and they're so there's so many ways and so many things we can do with them. Sorry, get off.
Very yummy and you don't even taste it.
Yeah.
No bean taste at all.
It's very, very moist.
Yep, very yummy.
Really moist.
You could have used buttermilk if you wanted to. On
Very
these.
yummy.
Yeah, and if you wanted to, you could switch out the flour to white, right? No big deal. All right, gonna let these go. All right, if you don't have any questions about beans.
Before you move on,
Sure, tell
I
me.
do have a question.
Oh, cool.
I've heard from people that if you store beans for a long period of time, that they get hard and then you can't cook them and boil them, and then you can't use them. I've heard people throwing them out, but I think there are ways that you can deal with that, aren't there?
So yeah, your beans, and this doesn't mean all beans. Each of them have a little different amount of protein, a little different storage life. So they don't last as long as rice and wheat. You know, that 30-year mark is not for beans. What I would suggest is that you decide which kind of bean you like. I have long-term only 1 5-gallon bucket of white, but I have lots of pinto and black because I love them so much. So 10 years or so. I've had mine since I did mine 2007. It's 14 years. They're perfect. They're just fine. But yes, they do. All the oils come out of them and they just dry out. It evaporates. If you cook them extra, right? Give them a little bit longer time in a crock pot with lots of water. You can make most beans come back. But if you're talking the 15-20 mark, they're pretty much done. And we all know that the nutrition of our staples, sorry, didn't wait long enough for that one. The nutrition of our staples is less the longer time we have. So your pasta, it will start degrading because it has sugar in it. It'll be the first thing that goes. Then your beans with your rice and your wheat, out there at the 30-year mark. So.
Is that pasta just canned or just stored in the plastic that you buy in the store?
No. So
or is this number
you
10
can do
cans?
that. I actually did that. I put all bags in one 5-gallon, and then I took them out of their plastic bags in another, and it has made no difference to the degradation. So yeah, and I got when I did my long-term storage, I got beans and cornmeal, which is not something that you would keep a lot because it's already been ground and it's losing its oils. But I got a lot of my stuff at the Winco, and then the other things that the church doesn't carry. But all the wheat and rice and all that I got from the LDS cannery. So, and once again, they don't ever have you do cornmeal because it's already been ground. They don't have you do flour. I have like 2 buckets of all-purpose flour. And when I've gone through them, I can tell that it's just not acting the same way as it used to do. But I don't really use it anyway. So, all right.
So for my 35-year-old beans that I've got the
You can
5-gallon pail for,
you can try.
Maybe grinding them down into a flour
For a
and
flour,
use them that way or
yeah.
something.
You can do that too. You can add salt to them and see if you can get the hulls to relax. But yeah, I would just try a couple cups overnight, see what happens. But yeah, I mean, we all know that's why we try to do, after we have our long-term staples for a year, then you start adding the other fun stuff, which is freeze-dried. That's why freeze-dried is so much better, because it just takes the nutrients and locks them in. So yeah, it would be great if you can, have the money to do freeze-dried everything. That'd be fantastic. And then that would change that degradation. But unfortunately, the nutrition does fail the longer that it's stored. All right, we are going to move now to oats. One of my favorite things. It's my go-to gluten-free. We are going to make 2 items here. We're going to do the oat flour pancakes. So you actually can take your oats and put them in a food processor, put them in a blender. I don't put more in a blender than a half a cup because the barrel kind, it just gets stuck at the bottom and it doesn't actually do all of them. So for this recipe, we actually want oat flour, not the oats straight out. So we can take, just pulse this until it's almost flour consistency. Yeah, that's perfect. Oat flour, actually acts a lot like wheat. I did them 1-to-1 in my favorite recipes, and oat flour does a really, really good job. That's just like your wheat items. So I was able to replace them 1-to-1 and my other recipes. So once again, I only grind this when I'm going to use it, not grinding all the time because we don't want all of those precious oils to dissipate and sour. So here's what it looks like. There are a few that are not quite done, but that's fine. That's actually really good. Before we go on more, I wanted to talk about making my own oatmeal packets. So for the cost alone, it's better to have these than
the Quaker oatmeal.
Quaker oatmeal, yes. It was like, what's the guy with the hair? So I have directions right here. I make my own, and what I just pulsed is the base of this, and then actually another half a cup of regular oats. You can put in whatever flavorings you want. You can put blueberries in here, brown sugar, put maple syrup, whatever. And this will actually make more for less than the packets of what's his name? Quaker, thank you. All right, so I do a bunch of these, stick them in the bag. The kids grab one, put it in the microwave with a cup of milk, cup of water, whatever they like, and that actually fills me up for the entire day. But having this is actually much less than doing Quaker packets. So if you want that recipe, those you can actually just email me and I'll give all of the recipes to you, more than just we're doing here. Did you have a question?
That was my question.
All right, so we've got our griddle nice and hot. And once again, we're going to do the dry and wet. So here is my wet stuff, which is a cup of milk, some tablespoon of oil, and a couple eggs. And here's the dry stuff. So you can already see that I've made my flour here, baking powder, salt, and whatever kind of sweetening you like. All right, so we're going to do this. Yeah, excellent. All right, 2 eggs. There we go. We're going to mix this up. So like my grandma said, just get all the ingredients put together and then leave it alone. Oats in recipes, they actually, once again, grab all of the moisture. So they like to take the moisture up. So I'm actually having this a little bit thin because oats are kind of heavy. So we just want, I'm just making sure that I have enough moisture for them. And any of your gluten-free items like oats, because they do absorb the water so well. You also, need to make sure that you've got some more moisture in there. A leavener too. That's the baking powder, and here's the leavener. Ooh, so pretty. This almost looks like cereal. I'll go over the different kinds of oats because it's kind of hard to remember. So hold on just a sec, get these started. Your gluten-free items, when you griddle them, you want to make sure not quite dry, but more on the dry side than we do like wheat pancakes. So you're gonna let them come almost like the bean ones we did, come a little bit dry on the sides. Okay, so oats have a higher protein count than even wheat, which is interesting because wheat is supposed to be the staff of life. But I think somebody knew that there were going to be people who needed gluten items. And so we have oats, which is great. They are gluten-free if they were certified. Some contamination can happen in the factories. So if you have it certified gluten-free, then it's in a room by itself, so other contaminants don't get in. Oats can be whole with the husk. So the actual oat is in a husk, and this is what we give to animals. We don't eat this ourselves. When you remove all that husk, all the outside stuff, and you leave only the kernel, and this little kernel is called a groat, which is interesting, funny. All right, this takes the most, when it's in its groat state, it takes the most cooking. Okay, then you take that groat and coat it a couple times, like we did wheat, and then we have, if it's cut in pieces by a steel blade, this is what you call steel cut oats. Also Irish, also cracked, right? All the same thing. But if you grind your groat with a stone, that's called Scottish porridge. It is creamier than like our cracked wheat. It would be creamier than this because you've taken all those oils out when you've cracked it. So to make oats like we have here, to make these guys, you take that groat and you steam it and you flatten it. So that's what we get here, is a kernel that's been steamed and flattened. Now that's regular rolled oats or old fashioned. Now if we take this and steam it more and flatten it more, then we get quick oats. So, oh look how pretty. Ooh. Perfect. All right. So this is kind of like the hierarchy, coming from a husk with all the all the leaves on it down to the very smallest thing you can do. So we have rolled oats, and we have quick or instant, and then if you ground that groat into flour, you can put it baking and thickening stews and everything that you need to. So that is the evolution of a poor little kernel of oats. Oat flour acts a lot like wheat flour in baking recipes, so I actually switch them 1-to-1 in most recipes. You do, as you can see, you need them a little bit longer because of the moisture. To make oat flour, like I said, put it in there, put it in a food processor, however you like it. But I never put more than a half a cup in there if you're using a blender. If you're using a food processor, go at it. All right, so 2/3 cups of oats will yield a half a cup of flour. So it condenses. And in any of my recipes, we do not we don't ever pack it. So brown sugar we pack. Don't ever pack any of your flours because that'll make it act very, very differently than it's supposed to. So these are nice and moist inside. Careful, hot once again. These are very moist. Sorry.
Those are good.
And so so once again, you can add whatever sweeteners you like.
Really yummy.
They are nice, and I like that they are so moist. Once again, very filling, that we would want in any kind of long-term emergency. This is an easy, pancakes are the first thing I think of when I think of something that will help people's moods in a long-term emergency. Okay, we're gonna put these last ones on here. And you can see it's no longer pancake consistency because all those oats are soaking up all of the moisture. Because it was, regular pancake, and now it's not. This is more like.
Will they cook up the same?
Yeah. It'll still be nice and moist. Ooh, okay.
Oh, those are delicious.
They're so pretty.
Really,
They're very, very good.
All right. Okay, now the last thing is the fun thing. I always want to leave the good thing for the last, the best thing for the last. And you have the recipe right in front of you. It's the no-bake energy bites. Now these are completely gluten-free, but they're packed with protein. So we have the oats for protein, peanut butter for protein, and coconut. So all of these, you get a ton of protein out of these guys. Sorry, I just want to make sure to turn that down. All right, so last bowl. All right, so the recipe does not talk about vanilla, but you can add vanilla to it if you want. You can put in other oils like almond and things like that if you want. So once again, I have all my dry ingredients. They're so pretty. And I make sure that my kids don't eat the chocolate chips because they're teeny tiny and they're really expensive. But we only use a 1/4 cup here, so no big deal. I'm actually then going to show you how I do the peanut butter and the honey. So in anything that you guys do, if there's going to be something sticky, in your recipe, so we can just take it and put some Pam in there, oil in there. If you have the oil in the recipe, just put it in here. What you're wanting to do is help the thick ingredients slip out. So on this one, we want, 1/2 cup peanut butter. You can use crunchy or not. I actually use creamy because we have the chunk from the coconut already. But absolutely, it doesn't really matter at all which one. All right. So grab that peanut butter. Gonna put it in. I actually just eye these now. I've made so many. All right. This is actually the wrong one. Sorry. It'll be wrong if I don't switch it. All right. You can use natural butters, your almond butters, things like that. It all just goes in here, no problem. All right. With this recipe, you can actually put nuts and cranberries and raisins and all that kind of stuff. You do want those added ingredients to be about the size of your chocolate chips. So that means taking almonds, let's say, and cutting them up a little. Put them in your little food processor, just so that we have the same consistency. Yay! Okay, done with peanut butter. I have put, what did I put in? I put raisins in the last time, or cranberry. Both of those are awesome in here. Now the recipe asks you to put them in little bowls, which takes a long time. So now our little peanut butter should slip pretty much out there, just like that. All right, now we need our honey. Honey is amazing. Honey is wonderful. Even though it's going to be hard, the longer that I have it, it's no big deal because you can microwave it, put it in a pot of hot water, and it will come right back. And sorry, I forgot my honey. So you can see in the honey that I have that it has the crystals which have dried out. But if I were to put this into a microwave, all that would come off the sides. All that sugar would crystallized. So, all right, so we have the Pam here and this little dude. Take a minute. I'm going to actually hand this to someone else so that, because my shoulders don't let me grind things very well. Okay, almost there. Very good. Now, the last time that we did this, everybody loved these protein. Because I make it so much, I don't actually take the time to put them. I need a little bit more than that. See, watch it just kind of slip right out. Pretty awesome, just like that. Sorry, what was I saying? Oh, the recipe wants you to roll them into balls, but no, I just stick it all into a Rubbermaid and put a spoon on top and put it in the fridge. I actually can leave it outside of the fridge. It doesn't need to have that. It doesn't go rotten. All right, so going to let one of my taste testers press this out. I don't have another spoon. All right. Sticky on the end, I apologize. Okay, so he's going to mix that all up. If you do the recipe and it's a little dry, just add more honey. If it's too sticky, since I just eye it, sometimes I'm just eyeing things and it doesn't get as much honey or as many oats as it should. Just put in some oats if it's a little bit sticky. But that should be just like the consistency. Not get all the honey in there. Oh, there it is. Okay. The consistency of a no-bake cookie, right? So once you bake, no-bake cookie, you just sit there. So that's what consistency this will have. It'll form into a nice ball. And then you can roll it in balls if you want to. Put Pam or butter on your fingers, right? And roll it into balls, or just do the lazy way like I do. Stick them into a Rubbermaid. So you can see the one that I made last week. I didn't bother to put it into balls. Just stick it in the fridge with a spoon, or leave it out by the toaster, which is what I usually do. Let's talk about oats. Love oats. We talked about how it's got the best protein. So out of the things that I've shown you here today, oats have the highest protein, then wheat, and your rice and cornmeal are about 7 and 6. So yeah, definitely if we want a protein-based diet, definitely use these and beans, oats, wheat, and beans, and that's fantastic. I do know that some people, speaking of beans, some people can have reactions, but it's just like wheat. Their body's not used to it. They, start little. What I did with my family, because this was all new to them a little while ago, is I would stick it in cookies. So put the bean puree in cookies, right? Put the wheat in the meatloaf, right? Getting them used to that. So I started with all the desserts and then worked my way back to soups and stews and things like that. Oh, that's beautiful. That's awesome. This is good stuff, Maynard. Yeah, sorry, I know you're sticky. So this is the perfect consistency, not too sticky, not dry. This is perfect. So I'm going to put this out, and they all can take a spoonful of it.
It's just one spoonful.
It's good stuff.
What's your serving, James?
That's right. So where's your guys'?
All done. Have to give you guys the bowl. Yeah, very good stuff. All right, so I think. Oh, I forgot to put in the vanilla. That's fine. Are there any questions from anything that I have talked about today? All right, I have no idea what time it is, but I think we've done awesome. If you do have any issues or questions or thoughts, I know there's a lot of people who have been doing long-term staples a lot longer than me. Just text, you can do that too. Email me at utahpreplady@gmail.com and ask questions, give thoughts. I'm always open to things. I'm not the end-all be-all about long-term storage, but what I put out to you guys, I've done myself all the recipes that I've done here and for long-term storage, I've done here with the Great Salt Lake, done by myself, and they're kid-friendly. If my kids won't eat a recipe, I don't keep it because I have to be able to accommodate all of my family. Now they're all big and they still have childlike hatreds of things. So if you have a question, email them to me. You can even text me and ask the question. And then if I don't know it, I'll go find it and then we'll both know. So that is my, go ahead.
If I may just make a comment about that. You can almost taste every individual ingredient.
Yes, it is. And it's weird that it's so,
tasty that way.
yeah, it's very good that you can taste everything that's in here. It's fairly simple. It's one of those recipes that once you know it, it's off the top of your head. You don't even get the recipe book out. So
A little sticky, but.
I'm sorry, that was my dad. You can do what I did.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Well, if there are no longer any questions, I will turn it back over to Casey. I appreciate your time and attention, and email me if you have any issues. I do all kinds of preparation, sanitation, fuels, alternative fuels, short-term food storage, long-term food storage, cooking demos. So give me a ring if you need something. Thank you.
Okay. We'd like to thank Becky for spending the time with us. We did have a technical issue during this. We are going to be probably fixing that, editing it, putting it together, and it will be available for the full presentation when we have an opportunity to rework that. Again, if you have questions, the information on how to email Becky is on our website, and I believe it's on the recipes too. So it'll be on the next screen, I'm told. So we're doing really good. Again, we would like to thank you for this seminar. I am looking forward to the ability to get together in person and do large gathering seminars. Hopefully this next year will permit that. So thank you again from the Bountiful Neighborhood Emergency Preparedness Council, and good night.